For many years, humanity lived quietly among the stars. We were not the oldest race, not the strongest, and not the most advanced. We were the newcomers, the ones who had only just discovered faster-than-light travel when others had been traveling between galaxies for thousands of years. In the great halls of the Galactic Union, our seat was small, our voice soft, and our presence ignored. The Union told us to be patient. They told us that humanity was young, reckless, and emotional. They said we must learn first, obey first, and prove ourselves through silence and obedience. And for a long time we listened. Humans built colonies on barren rocks, turned deserts into cities, and carved life into places no one else wanted. While other species laughed at our struggles, we sweated and bled and grew. When alien powers pushed at our borders, we swallowed our pride and retreated. When our trade ships were raided, we asked for protection, but none came. Instead, the Union scolded us, telling us we had probably provoked the attack. So humanity endured. We endured the insults whispered in council chambers. They are violent children. They cannot control their anger. They will destroy themselves soon. We endured the theft of resources. Fleets from older races would mine near our colonies, taking the richest fields and leaving us the scraps. When we complained, they called it shared use. We endured the presence of alien fleets in our skies. They said it was for security, but it was never our security. Their warships hovered above our worlds like predators watching prey, and our people learned to live under those shadows. But patience has limits. A heart can only be trampled so many times before it begins to harden. Humanity did not forget. Each insult, each theft, each humiliation, these were carved deep into memory. Yet still our leaders urged calm. Still, our people whispered to one another that peace was better than war. Still, we told ourselves that one day the galaxy would recognize us, respect us, and welcome us as equals. Generations lived and died under that hope. Children grew up knowing their parents' frustration. They saw their elders lower their heads before alien officials who treated them like dirt. They heard the laughter of Union delegates mocking their accents, their clothes, their desperate pleas. They saw humans work harder, dig deeper, and sacrifice more, only to be told that nothing they did was enough. And through it all, humanity held its patience. Some said it was weakness. Some said we had no choice. But in truth, our patience was not weakness, it was willpower. It was a choice to hold back, a choice to wait, a choice to keep believing in peace. But patience, like glass, can crack. The world of HFY 4 was the heart of this story. It was not Earth, not Mars, not one of the great shining cities. No, it was a struggling colony built on dust and stone. Families had worked for 3 generations to make it bloom. They had tilled the soil until it grew crops. They had built schools, hospitals, and homes out of their bare hands. It was proof of what humanity could do, even with little. It was hope itself, turned into land and life. The people of HFY 4 loved their world fiercely. They called it our second Earth, not because it was beautiful, but because it was theirs. Every tree planted, every house built, every child born there was a small victory against the endless cold of the void. But the galaxy did not care. The Threxian Empire saw only resources, only land, only power. To them, HFY 4 was not a home. It was a prize to be claimed. The first Threxian ships appeared above the skies of HFY 4 like wolves circling sheep. Their soldiers marched across the land, replacing human flags with their own banners. They told the colonists they were now citizens of the Threxian Empire. Their words were cold and sharp. This world belongs to us now. The humans resisted with protests, with words, with desperate calls for help. They begged the Galactic Union to intervene. They begged for justice, for fairness, for anything at all. The Union answered with silence. Then with excuses, they called it a misunderstanding. They told humanity to accept the loss for the greater stability of the galaxy. For the colonists of HFY 4, those words were knives. Their world, their sweat, their blood, it was being stolen in daylight, and no one cared. Then came the day that patience shattered. When the colonists resisted, when they refused to bow, the Threxians showed their true face. Soldiers opened fire on unarmed families. Houses burned. Schools crumbled. Men, women, and children were slaughtered in the streets. Entire neighborhoods turned to ash in hours. The galaxy called it a clash. The Union called it an unfortunate incident. But to humanity, it was not an incident. It was not a clash. It was a massacre, and massacres are not forgotten. That was the day humanity's silence ended. That was the day humanity's patience snapped. In the ashes of Cygni IV, a fire was born, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The news of Cygni IV spread across human space like fire. At first, there was disbelief. How could it be possible? How could the galaxy stand silent while men, women, and children were butchered? But disbelief soon turned into anger. Anger turned into grief, and grief began to harden into something sharper, something unstoppable. On Earth, in the great halls of the United Assembly, delegates stood in silence as the first images were shown. Burned houses, bodies lying in the streets, parents clutching children who would never wake again. The screens glowed with horror, and the chamber trembled with fury. For years, humanity had bowed its head, had smiled through pain, had played the part of the obedient child. But in that moment, the mask fell. Mothers who had once begged for peace now demanded war. Fathers who had once taught patience now spoke with clenched fists. Soldiers who had waited in silence now sharpened their blades. The leaders of Earth knew there was no turning back. The Galactic Union had betrayed them. The Great Council of Ancient Races had proven that justice was only a word to be used when convenient. They would never protect humanity. They would never respect humanity. They had left us to bleed so humanity would protect itself. The assembly gathered for an emergency vote. The chamber was filled with tension so heavy it felt like the air itself was breaking. Old rivals sat side by side. Nations that once plotted against one another now shared a single burning purpose. One by one, voices rose. We cannot allow this crime to stand. No more patience, no more silence. When the vote came, the answer was clear. Every leader, every counselor, every representative raised their hand. The word thundered across the chamber as one voice. War. It was not shouted with joy. It was spoken with grief, with fury, with the weight of every innocent lost. But it was unshakable. The time of waiting was over. The decision spread quickly. On Mars, miners threw down their tools and volunteered for service. On Luna, shipyards worked day and night, their furnaces blazing, their workers sweating, building ships faster than ever before. In the belt, hidden factories that had been prepared in secret began to awaken, releasing fleets of machines long kept in silence. Humanity had been underestimated. While the galaxy mocked us, we had been building. While they ignored us, we had been preparing. Our ships were smaller, yes. Our fleets were fewer. But what we had sharpened to perfection, and what we lacked in numbers, we made up for with will. For centuries, humans had fought wars on their own world. We had burned cities, toppled empires, destroyed ourselves, and rebuilt again and again. War was carved into our history, written into our blood. We knew its cost. We knew its pain. But we also knew its language better than anyone. And now the galaxy would learn that language too. The Threxian Empire laughed at first. To them, humanity was nothing more than an insect, weak, soft, powerless. They believed the war would last a week at most, and then humanity would kneel. But the Threxians had never seen humanity angry. They had never seen what happens when patience runs dry. Across human space, soldiers stood ready. Some were professionals trained for years. Others were farmers, miners, workers, ordinary people who had never held a weapon before. Yet every one of them carried the same fire in their heart. The fire of Cygni IV. The fire of justice. They did not march for conquest. They did not fight for glory. They fought for the faces of those who had been taken, for the children burned in their homes, for the families erased from history. Every soldier whispered the same vow. Never again. The Galactic Union tried to stop it. They sent messages, they demanded talks, they begged humanity to show restraint. But the time for restraint had ended. When Union ambassadors came to Earth, they were met with silence. No more speeches. No more diplomacy. Only the sound of engines roaring, of fleets leaving orbit, of armies preparing to cross the stars. Humanity was no longer asking. Humanity was no longer waiting. The vote had been made. The decision was final. For the first time in history, all of Earth stood as one. No flags divided us. No borders split us. Old enemies shook hands not because they forgave, but because they understood that humanity's survival required unity. The anger of billions beat like a single heart, and the galaxy trembled, though it did not yet know why. In the homes of Earth, Children asked their parents why war was coming. The parents answered softly with sorrow in their voices, because the galaxy must learn that our patience is not endless. On the colonies of Mars, Titan, Europa, and the Belt, workers pushed themselves to exhaustion. They knew the fight would be hard, and they knew many would not return. Yet they labored with hope, because for the first time they felt humanity was no longer on its knees. On the training grounds, soldiers prepared. They remembered the pictures of King IV. They remembered the cries of mothers, the ashes of homes, the rivers of blood, and they promised themselves that no other colony would ever suffer that fate again. Humanity had reached its breaking point. The world had changed. There was no going back. In the ashes of patience, war had been born, and the galaxy, so used to seeing us as children, was about to learn the truth. When humans rise together, nothing can stand in their way. The chamber of Earth's united assembly had never been so silent, and never so full of fire. Delegates from every nation sat in their seats, eyes locked forward, hearts pounding with the weight of history. They had gathered many times before, for trade disputes, for border issues, for economic reforms. But never for this, never for war. Above them, on the vast screens, the faces of Signy Darfur still burned. Images of smoldering houses, broken streets, and children wrapped in blankets that could not hide the blood. The silence in the chamber was not peace. It was the silence before a storm. Every leader knew what the decision meant. War was not a word to speak lightly. War meant sacrifice. War meant death. War meant sending sons and daughters into the cold void, perhaps never to return. But so did silence. So did waiting. So did the choice to bend one more time to the cruelty of others. This time, bending was no longer an option. The Speaker of the Assembly rose. His voice was old, tired, but steady as iron. We have begged for respect. We have asked for fairness. We have waited for justice. And what did we receive? His hand trembled as he pointed to the screen. Slaughter. Murmurs rippled through the chamber, voices tight with grief and rage. We trusted the Union, the Speaker continued. We believed their promises. We believed patience would win us peace, but patience only gave them time to crush us. Now the blood of Signy IV cries out. Will we answer, or will we stay silent, waiting for the next colony to burn? The hall erupted. Delegates rose to their feet, some with fists in the air, some with tears in their eyes. They shouted not with division, but with unity. For once, Earth was not many nations, it was one people. The vote was called. Each delegate stood, their voices recorded, their choice echoing in the chamber. Yes, yes, yes. One after another, the word filled the air. It was not a roar of triumph, but of fury, of sorrow, of resolve. The decision was unanimous. Humanity had chosen war, and with that single choice, centuries of silence were broken. The news spread faster than light. Across Earth, across Mars, across every colony and station, the word burned. War has been declared. Crowds filled the streets. Some wept, others cheered, but none were indifferent. The people knew the cost, but they also knew the price of doing nothing would be greater. On Mars, miners who had once dug for survival now dug with pride, extracting the ores needed to forge weapons and ships. On Titan, engineers worked without sleep, building engines that would carry humanity into battle. On Luna, factories that once made farming machines now turned out rifles, armor, and drones. Everywhere humanity moved as one. Old grudges were forgotten. Nations that once hated each other now stood shoulder to shoulder. Soldiers who once fought under different flags now trained under a single banner. The banner of Earth, the banner of humanity. The galaxy had always called us divided. They said we would never unite, never overcome our selfishness. But they did not understand that nothing unites humanity more than injustice. Nothing binds us tighter than grief. And nothing awakens our strength more than the cries of the innocent. The military council gathered next. Generals from Earth, admirals from Mars, commanders from the Belt, they had argued before, but not today. Today their voices carried only one purpose: victory. Maps of star systems glowed above the table. The Threxian Empire stretched wide and powerful, its fleets vast and its armies cruel. To strike them was to challenge a giant. But humanity had a weapon the galaxy did not understand. Not just ships, Not just guns, it was will. The generals knew the odds. They knew the risks, yet they spoke with clear voices. We will not fight for conquest. We will not fight for riches. We fight because justice demands it. We fight because silence has killed enough of us. And so the plans were laid. Secret shipyards in the asteroid belt released vessels built in silence, hidden from prying alien eyes. Railguns, faster than anything the galaxy had seen, were loaded and primed. Drone swarms, controlled by AIs developed in secret labs, waited for their first flight. Nuclear warheads, ancient but perfected, were armed once more. While the galaxy laughed at our slowness, we had been preparing. While they dismissed us as children, we had been sharpening our teeth. Now humanity was ready to show them. The Union sent messages, pleading for restraint. They told humanity to reconsider, to think carefully, to wait. But humanity had waited long enough. Every message was met with silence, not because we did not hear, but because we no longer cared. In the skies of Earth, fleets gathered. Ship after ship rose from the planet, their engines burning bright. Families stood in fields and on rooftops, watching them climb into the heavens. Mothers held their children close. Fathers saluted as the ships passed overhead. Everyone knew what it meant. It meant humanity would no longer kneel. The first targets were chosen. Cygni IV would be liberated. Threxian fleets would be shattered. Every colony they had enslaved would be freed. And the galaxy would finally learn what humanity's patience had been hiding. On the eve of war, the soldiers gathered in silence. They looked at one another, strangers and friends alike, and nodded. No grand speeches were needed. The memory of Cygni IV was speech enough. The speaker of the assembly gave only one order, broadcast across every ship, every colony, every home. Let the stars remember this day. The day humanity chose not to wait. The day we rose as one. The day we proved our strength. And the fleets leapt into the void. The galaxy thought humanity would take months to prepare. They thought we would argue, hesitate, or stumble as we always had. But they were wrong. The decision had been made, and humanity moved like a storm. Within days, fleets launched from Earth, Mars, Titan, and the Belt. Engines roared, filling the void with fire. Hundreds of ships, large and small, carried humanity's fury into the stars. From orbit, the sight was unforgettable, a river of light flowing upward, cutting through the darkness of space. The target was clear, Cygni IV. It was not just a colony. It was a wound in humanity's heart. Families had died there, children had burned there, and patience had snapped there. If this war was to begin, it would begin with justice for Cygni IV. The Threxians were not afraid. Their commanders saw the human fleets approaching and laughed. Primitive ships, they called them. Weak engines, weak weapons, weak soldiers. To them, humanity's attack was nothing more than desperation, but they did not understand what desperation can do to the human soul. As the first human fleet dropped out of warp near Cygni IV, the soldiers stared at the planet below. Many of them had lost family there. Many of them still carried the faces of loved ones burned into memory. Their hands shook, not from fear but from rage. The commander's voice came over the comms, steady and firm. Today we fight not for conquest, but for justice. Today we take back what is ours. And then the order was given. Engage. The void exploded with fire. Railguns thundered, their slugs moving faster than the eye could see. Missiles streaked across the black, splitting into smaller warheads that rained down on Threxian ships. Swarms of drones no larger than a man flew in clouds, darting through enemy shields and tearing into engines. The Threxians responded with arrogance. Their capital ships fired plasma bolts the size of buildings, lighting the void in blue flame. Their fighters rushed forward like locusts. They believed the humans would scatter. They believed we would break, but the humans did not scatter. They did not break. They fought with precision, with fury, with the kind of discipline born not from pride but from survival. Every human ship fought like it carried the weight of Earth itself. Every soldier fought like they carried the memory of Cygni IV in their chest. On the ground, Threxian soldiers marched through the colony streets, still treating the humans there as slaves. They did not expect the sky to burn. The first orbital strike hit the Threxian garrison like the fist of God. Buildings crumbled, towers of steel turned into molten wreckage. Human landing craft followed, breaking through the atmosphere in streaks of fire. Colonists who had survived the massacre looked up, their eyes wide, their hearts pounding. They had thought Earth had abandoned them. They had thought no help would come. But now through the smoke and fire they saw human banners falling from the sky. "Earth has not forgotten you," came the broadcast, booming across the colony. "We are here. You are free." Tears ran down the faces of survivors. Some fell to their knees in disbelief. Others screamed in joy. After so much silence, after so much pain, their people had returned. The fighting on the ground was brutal. Threxian soldiers were larger, stronger, and better armed. But the humans fought with something the Threxians could not match. They fought with rage. They fought with purpose. They fought with the memory of their murdered families. Street by street, house by house, the colony was retaken. Human soldiers moved like shadows, striking fast, striking hard, never stopping. Every corner echoed with gunfire, every alley filled with smoke and cries. The Threxians, once so confident, began to falter. Their commanders shouted orders, but their soldiers' hearts broke when they saw the humans advance. For the first time, they realized this enemy was not weak. For the first time, they realized humanity would never kneel again. Above the planet, the battle reached its climax. A massive Threxian warship, towering over the battlefield, fired volley after volley, tearing through human shields. Dozens of human ships had already been lost, but the fleet did not retreat. Instead, one small frigate, its hull burning, broke formation and charged. Its captain's voice came over the comms, steady but filled with fire. "For Siniar!" The frigate rammed straight into the Threxian flagship. The explosion lit the sky like a new star. Both ships were torn apart, and in that moment the tide turned. The Threxian fleet, broken and burning, began to flee. Humanity did not chase. The point had been made. When the smoke cleared, Sini IV was free. Human banners flew once more above its soil. Survivors walked through the streets in shock, some touching the soldiers' armor just to believe they were real. Families reunited, crying into each other's shoulders. The soldiers did not cheer. They did not smile. They bowed their heads in silence for the lives lost, for the blood spilled. Victory was not sweet, it was heavy. But it was justice. The message was sent across the galaxy: Segni IV is ours. Humanity will not be silenced. And every alien race who watched from afar felt the same chill in their bones. They had seen humanity patient. They had seen humanity obedient. Now, for the first time, they had seen humanity angry, and they realized, too late, what that meant. The liberation of Segni IV was only the beginning. The galaxy thought it was a small act of rebellion, a single strike that would soon be crushed. But humanity had not come for one battle. Humanity had come for war. The 6-day war began, and the galaxy would never forget it. Day 1, the Threxians gathered their fleets at Delta Aurigae, certain they would stop the humans there. Their ships were larger, their numbers greater, their commanders confident. They expected a desperate human defense, a broken retreat, but what they met was something new. Human railguns cut through their armor like knives through cloth. Drone swarms darted into weak points, tearing engines apart. Missiles split into dozens of smaller warheads, overwhelming defenses. The battle lasted only hours before the Threxians fled, leaving wreckage burning in the void. The galaxy watched in shock. Humanity had not defended. Humanity had dominated. Day 2 human ground troops landed on Threxian colonies. The Threxians expected slaughter, but what happened shook the stars. The humans did not come only to fight. They came to free. Everywhere they landed, they broke chains and unlocked prisons. Races long enslaved by the Threxians stared in disbelief as human soldiers cut their bonds. For centuries, no one had dared oppose the Empire. Now these strange, fiery newcomers had come not to conquer, but to liberate. Whispers spread quickly. The humans fight for us too. For the first time in living memory, hope spread across the galaxy. Day 3, the Threxians, furious and humiliated, struck back. They sent a massive fleet straight for Earth. They planned to burn our home, to end the war in a single strike. But humanity was ready. At the edge of our system, near Neptune's orbit, the fleets clashed. It was the largest battle humanity had ever fought. Threxian warships darkened the stars, but human ships stood unbroken. Hours turned into a storm of fire. The void itself seemed to burn. And then at last the Threxian fleet broke. Their shattered wrecks floated in silence, never reaching Earth. When the news spread across our worlds, people wept. Earth was safe. Humanity still stood. Day 4, the galaxy began to tremble. Ancient species who had mocked us now whispered in fear. They had believed humans weak, fragile children in the dark. But in only 4 days, humanity had torn holes in the empire of giants. The Council of the Union argued endlessly. Some called for sanctions, others for intervention, but none dared send their fleets. They had seen what humanity had done to the Threxians. They did not wish to be next. The galaxy watched. Humanity fought, and the stars themselves seemed to lean closer, waiting for the outcome. Day 5, the Threxian Empire faltered. Their supply lines broke. Their colonies fell one after another. Every battle weakened them further, and every defeat strengthened humanity's resolve. The Threxian rulers, who had once laughed, now begged for talks. They offered treaties, demanded negotiations, promised to make peace. But humanity remembered Signeath IV. Humanity remembered the bodies in the streets, the cries of children, the flames in the night, and humanity refused. There would be no peace without justice. Day 6, the war reached its end. Humanity's fleet stood over the Threxian homeworld. Their armies were broken, their fleet scattered, their empire shattered. From orbit, human commanders looked down upon the world that had brought so much suffering. Soldiers waited for the order to burn it, to reduce the planet to ash, but the order never came. Instead, the humans demanded surrender, not annihilation, not slaughter, surrender. The Threxian leaders, broken and defeated, bowed their heads at last. In only 6 days, humanity had brought an empire to its knees. The galaxy was silent. 6 days. That was all it took. Where other wars lasted centuries, humanity had fought with such fury, such unity, that the outcome was decided in less than a week. The stars themselves seemed to shiver with the speed of it. The other races had seen our patience. They had seen our mercy. They had thought those were weakness, but now they had seen our strength, and the lesson would never be forgotten. On Earth, bells rang in every city. On Mars, workers stopped to cheer as the news spread. On Signeath IV, survivors wept in joy, their chains broken forever, but the soldiers did not cheer. They remembered the cost. They remembered the blood. Victory was heavy, not sweet. Yet in their hearts they carried one truth. Humanity had stood together. Humanity had fought as one, and humanity had won. The 6-Day War was over, but its shadow had only just begun. The 6-Day War ended, but its echo spread far beyond the ruined fleets of the Threxian Empire. The galaxy had watched every moment, and the galaxy could not forget what it had seen. For thousands of years, empires had risen and fallen slowly, over centuries of war. Yet humanity had done the impossible. In 6 short days, they had crushed a power that had ruled for generations. It was not just victory. It was a revelation. Fear among the powerful in the grand chambers of the Galactic Council. Silence weighed heavier than stone. Ambassadors of great powers sat in their glittering robes, their voices hushed. Before the war, they had mocked humanity. They had laughed at our small fleets and fragile bodies. Now those same voices trembled when speaking our name. 6 days, whispered one elder, his scaled hands shaking. If they could do this to the Threxians, what could they do to us? Others nodded. The arrogance that once filled the council chamber was gone. For the first time in centuries, the mighty feared the weak. Hope among the oppressed on distant slave worlds, the news spread like fire. Species who had long been chained lifted their heads in wonder. The humans, they learned, had not fought only for themselves. They had freed colonies, cut bonds, and given weapons to those who had never dreamed of fighting back. To many, the 6-Day War was more than a victory. It was a promise. On the dark mines of Velnar, a young worker whispered to his brother, "If humans can stand against the Threxians, maybe one day, we can stand too." In that moment, a spark was lit. The chains of fear began to weaken. Confusion of the neutral, not all races knew how to react. Some were cautious, unsure whether to treat humans as saviors or threats. The Asurai, masters of trade, worried. Their riches had always protected them, but wealth meant nothing against human fury. The Veyari, scholars of history, debated endlessly. This should not be possible, they argued. 6 days? The Threxians had fleets 10 times larger. How did the humans do it? Yet no answer satisfied them. Humanity had broken every rule of war. Whispers of legend soon, stories began to spread. Not dry reports of battles, but tales filled with fire and awe. They spoke of human ships that moved like shadows, striking with perfect precision. They told of soldiers who fought not for conquest but for freedom. They repeated words of survivors who had seen human eyes blazing with unyielding will. Some whispered that humans were not ordinary at all, that they were forged from war, born of struggle, raised in fire. To many, humanity became not just a new power, but a legend. Division among the Threxians. For the Threxians themselves, the war left scars deeper than any blade. Their empire had shattered in less than a week. Worlds rebelled, soldiers deserted, nobles turned against one another. Some cursed humanity, swearing vengeance. Others lowered their heads, admitting defeat. But most were simply lost, unable to believe that their once mighty empire had been broken so quickly. In their palaces, the rulers who survived argued bitterly. Should they surrender fully? Should they rebuild in silence? Or should they try again one day? But even in their anger, one truth remained: they feared us. And that fear would never leave them. The human choice back on Earth and Mars, leaders gathered to decide the future. They had won, yes. But what would come next? Some demanded expansion. The galaxy will fear us anyway, they said. We should take what we can. Others argued for peace. We fought to defend, not to conquer, they insisted. If we become tyrants, we are no better than the Threxians. It was not an easy choice. Humanity stood at the edge of history, the eyes of the galaxy fixed upon them. Every step forward would shape the stars for centuries. The weight of victory soldiers who returned home were greeted with cheers, but many did not smile. They carried memories of battle, of friends lost, of fire and blood. To them, victory felt heavy. Yet when they saw the children of Cygni IV running free, when they saw the chains broken, their hearts found peace. Their suffering had not been in vain. Humanity had paid a price. But humanity had shown the galaxy something new. The galaxy holds its breath in. The weeks after the war, the galaxy changed. Borders shifted, old alliances trembled, and new rebellions sparked. Everyone waited, wondering, what would humanity do now? Would they rise as conquerors? Would they retreat as defenders? Or would they shape something new, something greater? The stars held their breath, and in every corner of the galaxy one truth echoed again and again. The humans are not to be provoked. Their patience has limits, and when it breaks, even empires fall. The 6-day war had ended, but its shadow remained. Across the galaxy, empires trembled, oppressed peoples stirred, and the stars whispered the same question. What would humanity do now? The answer was not clear, not even to the humans themselves. For the first time in history, the fate of many worlds rested in their hands. Debates on Earth in the great halls of Earth's United Assembly. Leaders argued for endless hours. Some voices were fierce, filled with fire. They fear us already, one general declared. We should expand. We should take their worlds before they strike again. If we don't, they will return stronger. Others spoke with softer tones, but with no less passion. We did not fight to become tyrants, said a young ambassador. We fought to protect. If we conquer, we betray everything our soldiers died for. The debates grew heated. Expansion or restraint? Conquest or peace? Humanity stood at a crossroads, and the choice would decide not only their future but the galaxy's. The voice of the soldiers, among the soldiers who had fought, the choice felt different. They remembered the screams on Cygni IV, the burning colonies, the sight of broken chains. One veteran stood before the assembly. His uniform was scarred, his eyes weary. We did not fight for power, he said. We fought because we were pushed too far. We fought because no one else would. The galaxy does not need another empire. It needs hope. Let us be that hope. His words echoed in every chamber, soft but unshakable. Rebellions rise. Meanwhile, across the stars, oppressed races began to rise. On Velnar, miners threw down their chains and armed themselves with stolen rifles. On Teros, farmers refused to pay tribute to their overlords. On worlds once ruled by fear, people painted the human flag upon their walls, seeing it as a symbol of freedom. The rebellions grew quickly, and many called for help. They begged humanity to guide them, to protect them, to lead them. It was a temptation. Humanity had never been so powerful. With a single command, they could build an empire of freed worlds united under their banner. But would that make them liberators or rulers? The Threxians struggle in the ruins of the Threxian Empire. Chaos spread. Their fleets were shattered, their colonies lost, their authority broken. Yet they were not entirely gone. Proud warriors swore revenge even as their leaders bent their knees in surrender. Some worlds resisted, clinging to old power, while others begged for mercy. The galaxy watched the Threxians carefully, but none more closely than humanity. They had defeated them, yes, but would the Threxians rise again? Or would they fade into history as the empire that collapsed in 6 days? The eyes of the Council, the Galactic Council, remained divided. Some members wanted to punish humanity, to place restrictions to ensure they could not rise further. Others believed such actions would only provoke another war. Behind closed doors, deals were whispered, alliances reshaped. The old order had cracked, and everyone scrambled to prepare for what was to come, but none could ignore the truth. Humanity had earned a place at the table. Whether feared or respected, they could no longer be dismissed. The struggle within on Mars, in the quiet of the colonies, ordinary people asked questions that leaders could not answer. Will my son have to fight again? A mother whispered as she watched soldiers return. Will Earth rule the stars? A worker asked, tightening bolts on a ship. Or will we step back and let the galaxy heal? The questions hung heavy in the air. Humanity had gained power, but power always came with a price. The decision at last. Earth's assembly reached a decision. Humanity would not become conquerors. They would not build an empire of iron. Instead, they would stand as protectors. They would defend the weak, resist tyranny, and ensure that no species would suffer chains as Signifor had. It was not the easiest path. It was not the safest, but it was the path true to humanity's heart. When the announcement spread across the stars, reactions were mixed. Some laughed, calling humans naive. Others sighed in relief, glad that the fiery newcomers had chosen restraint. And to those still in chains, it was a beacon of hope, a new reputation. The galaxy now spoke of humanity in hushed tones. Not as conquerors, not as savages, but as a storm that had risen, struck, and then stepped back. They were dangerous, yes, but they were also different. Unlike empires of old, they did not hunger for endless land. Unlike rulers of the past, they did not crush those they defeated. In the hearts of many, respect bloomed where once there had only been fear. The crossroads remains yet deep within. Every human knew the truth. The crossroads was not truly behind them. The galaxy was vast, filled with dangers, filled with temptations. The future would test them again and again. But for now, humanity stood tall, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as something new, guardians of their destiny. And in the silence of the stars, the galaxy whispered one truth. When humanity's patience snaps, the universe shakes. But when their will chooses mercy, the universe changes. The galaxy had changed forever. Empires trembled, rebellion stirred, and whispers of humanity's strength carried from one star to another. Yet for humans, the greatest question still lingered. What would come next? They had won the 6-day war. They had brought an empire to its knees. But victories fade and only choices remain. The memory of fire for the soldiers, the war lived on in their hearts. They remembered the glow of burning fleets, the cries of freed prisoners, and the silence of fallen comrades. One captain stood at a memorial on Earth, staring at names carved into stone. He whispered softly, "We did not fight for conquest. We fought because no one else would." His words echoed the feelings of many. The scars of war could not be erased, but they gave birth to something greater, a purpose, a galaxy of watchers. Across the stars, eyes remained fixed on humanity. The Asuride traders feared their markets would crumble if humans decided to dominate. The Veeri scholars filled their libraries with endless debates on how such a young species could fight with such fury. And the oppressed? They waited. They hoped. They whispered prayers that humans would come again if chains tightened around their necks. Every race prepared for the future, but none could deny it. Humanity had stepped into history as more than just another species. They had become a symbol, seeds of alliance slowly. Strange messages began to arrive at Earth. Not threats, not demands, but offers. Small nations who had long been ignored by great powers reached out to humanity. They wished for friendship, for protection, for trust. Some humans were surprised, others smiled. This was how it began, not with empires carved by fire, but with hands extended across the stars. The first alliances of humanity were not built on fear but on hope, and that made them stronger than steel. The Threxian fall on their homeworld, The Threxians faced the truth they had long denied. Their fleets were ash, their colonies gone, their rule shattered. For centuries they had ruled through fear. Now fear consumed them instead. Some Threxians plotted revenge, swearing their children would reclaim lost glory. Others bowed their heads broken, their pride gone. But most simply struggled to survive in a galaxy where they were no longer masters. For them, humanity was a wound that would never heal, a reminder of the day their empire fell in 6 days. The human way, but humanity did not rise as their conqueror. They did not demand tribute. They did not enslave the fallen, instead they rebuilt their own. They helped free colonies stand. They guarded but did not rule. This was strange to the galaxy. To fight with such fury but refuse to dominate, it made no sense to many. Yet it was humanity's way, and in that way lay their greatest strength. Stories of 6 days and the years that followed. Stories of the 6-Day War spread like wind. On distant worlds, parents told their children about the humans who had come like fire and left like guardians. Songs were sung, paintings drawn, legends written. Some exaggerated the tales, saying humans were spirits of war, born from the void. Others spoke more softly, telling of ordinary men and women who carried extraordinary courage. But all stories carried the same message. Do not mistake patience for weakness. The lesson of unity among humans. The war taught another lesson. For the first time, Earth, Mars, and every colony had fought as one. Divisions of the past faded in the fires of battle. They were no longer separate nations scattered across the stars. They were humanity. That unity became their greatest shield, and though arguments and struggles remained, the memory of those 6 days reminded them that together, they could face anything. The endless future years passed, but the galaxy never forgot. Whenever disputes arose, whenever powers threatened the weak, one question always returned. What if humanity's patience snaps again? It was a warning. It was a promise. And it was a truth none could ignore. Humanity had shown restraint, yes, but the fire still lived within them. And every race knew that if pushed too far, the storm would rise again. The legacy on the anniversary of the war, crowds gathered on Earth and Mars. Bells rang, banners waved, and candles were lit for the fallen. A young child asked her father, "Why do we remember?" "The war is over." The father knelt, his voice steady but soft. "Because the galaxy must never forget. Because patience is not weakness. Because freedom is worth fighting for." The child nodded, her eyes wide. In that moment, the legacy lived on, not in weapons, not in fleets, but in hearts. The 6-Day War had ended long ago, but its lesson burned eternal. Humanity was patient. Humanity was kind. But when their patience snapped, when injustice grew too great, they became a storm that no empire could withstand, and so, in every shadowed hall of power, in every whisper across the stars, the same words lived on. Do not test them, for 6 days were enough to change the galaxy forever.